Hello, this is Cho of the Shiny Colors Discord, and welcome to another episode of the Shiny Review. Today we have 4 cards to talk about, 3 that are new and 1 that's returning. We have a new produced SSR for Mikoto, a support SSR for Yuika, a produced SR for Rinze, and a support SSR for Amana. Remember that Mikoto and Yuika are both permanent, so don't worry about them. They will be around forever, basically, and you'll be able to re-roll for them once their banner leaves. Starting things off, we have Mikoto. It hasn't even been a whole month, and SHHis have completed their first P-SSR set with the release of Mikoto. Functionally, she's identical to Nichika's SSR, just with reversed attributes early and late. In some ways, you could consider Mikoto to be slightly worse, as the general pool of visual supports are arguably better than Dance, but the versatility of these cards pretty much keep them dead even. There's an important piece of information that I need to clarify on from Nichika's review, which is that the appeal buff gimmick of Nichika and Mikoto do actively apply to memory appeals as well, not just their live appeals. Because of this, you're very free to choose between either card as center as long as you plan around using these buffs in a timely fashion. They're an extremely flexible team to build around and encourage it a ton through their passives. Mikoto's roles are as center, maybe, a buffer, as well as memory gauge boost, and I moderately to low recommend pulling for Mikoto. She is going to be around for forever, and unless you really want to commit to the SHHis playstyle, I wouldn't worry about it just yet. Mikoto's initial skill is a Dance 3.0 appeal that increases all Nichika appeals by 0.5 for 4 turns. I should also now say that Nichika's was written wrong. I originally had hers as a visual 3.5, that's supposed to be a visual 3.0. That has been adjusted at least on the description for the Nichika video, so just keep that in mind going forward. This appeal links into a Dance 50% buff for 5 turns. At max, she unlocks a visual 4.0 appeal that increases all Nichika appeals by 1.0 for 4 turns, and links into a visual 50% buff for 5 turns. Mikoto's 1-star passive is a Dance visual 25% up that requires the turn count to be 4 or earlier. This is a 20% chance to activate twice. Mikoto also has 2 2-star passives. The first is a Dance visual 50% up and memory gauge 10% up, as long as the total unique units of your team is at least 3 or more. This has a 30% chance to activate 3 times, and this also unlocks a visual plus 50 uncap. The second passive is a Dance 40% up that requires your mental to be 75% or higher. This has a 20% chance to activate twice. Her 3-star uncap is a Dance visual plus 100, and her 4-star uncap is a visual plus 150. Her memory appeal once maxed out is a visual 2.0 appeal that links into a Dance visual 0.8 appeal. For the support recommendations, much like with Nichika, we don't have any particularly dedicated supports for them just yet. We also only have Wing currently to use as well, so really just pick your best visual or dance supports and go for it. Dual Stat is a safe bet for the time being, as is Tri-Stat, so Illumination Stars or Hokura are some pretty safe bets to go with. The alternatives can be really open-ended currently, so don't stress too much about it. It's going to be a little bit before SHHis get to shine truly, so picking comfier supports is still completely valid. Anything to keep the run simple and easy will suffice. Now, in lieu of team building, we actually had something pretty helpful, which is the fact that because SHHis want to focus around 3 different units, when Mikoto was showed off during the live stream, we actually got some sample ideas of what to potentially work with. So, the first recommendation they have is to try 2 Stray Light and 1 Illumination Stars. This type of team focuses more on active buffs. So, I can't really necessarily say for certain which cards you may use in this combination, but maybe using Stray Light and Illuminate in some sort of balance can work well for SHHis. So maybe you could choose cards like Yuika's first SSR, or maybe you could choose some of the limited Illumination Stars cards since they have some active buffs associated with them. It's really up to you and what your box has available. The second team they recommend is Alstroemeria and Nocchill. This team focuses more on high stamina as well as sustain and defensive utility, between damage cut, healing, evasion. So if you want a more kind of high health, relatively low risk type of team with SHHis, you can try the Alstroemeria Nocchill route. The last team they recommend is Antika Hokura Nocchill, which is focusing more on aggressive attention up as well as revenge and reaction. So if you want a much more dangerous play style that plays more off of Hokura's attention up, that kind of plays into reaction, and then also low health passives from Antika, that's also a route you can take. So again, I really can't go into super high detail because there's so many potential options that this team can actually go. Most teams are pretty well stuck into just their unit and then a couple cards to splash in, whereas here, splashing is the whole point of the team. So, in reality, just focus on whatever playstyle you think fits your box best and work with that. And if you have any suggestions, of course, feel free to let us know in the comments what teams you've been using and if they've been working well for you. On to the grades. As a center, Mikoto earns a C to an A-, depending. Mikoto's memory appeal has more or less the same grading that I would give to Nichika, now that we understand how they work properly. If you don't run SHHis together, specifically their SSRs, and take advantage of their mutual buffing, the memory appeal feels terribly weak. If you do buff up, however, it becomes a very solid and reasonably applicable memory appeal that should keep SHHis healthy for a little while. As a unit, B- to A+. I'm going to be maintaining a similar stance as I did for Nichika's review, as they're largely the same unit. Much like with the memory appeal, Mikoto becomes an incredibly powerful unit once you factor in the buffing of Nichika. Being able to improve any of your appeals by 1.5 for at least 2 turns is no joke as you continue to optimize and get higher base appeal stats, so I imagine this is a style that will age well as we continue through this next step of shiny colors. Next we have Yuika. Yuika's latest permanent SSR support is an interesting mashup of masteries and passives that result in a fairly flexible card for dance teams. She's directly comparable to Cherry Jelly Amana, who we talked about way back with Natsuha 4. Wow, how time flies. Keep in mind that her masteries only hit the same power as Amana by level 80, so she can be fairly expensive as a permanent card. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, and Rest Boost, and she comes with 3 unique support skills. Dance Mastery Dance, reaching plus 12 at level 70, Dance Mastery Stamina, reaching plus 7 at level 80, and Unit Mastery Mental, reaching plus 5 at level 70. Her support appeal does scale, starting at a Dance 2.5, working its way up to a Dance 3.0 at level 80. Her TFD idea is Appeal, her Insight token for Grad is Dance, and her proficiency and landing point is in Vocal. Yuika's 1-star passive is a Dance 30% up that requires you to be in the dance position. This has a 20% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a Dance 60% up that requires your mental to be 59% or lower. This has a 20% chance to activate once. Her 3-star Uncap is a Dance plus 100, and her 4-star Appeal is a Dance 2.8 that lowers your attention by 10% for 4 turns. Her event passive is a Dance 30% up that requires you to be in the dance position, and it has a 10% chance to activate twice. Yuika earns an A-. Yuika is another in the long line of solid permanent supports, which I suppose makes sense as we enter our 3rd year. She has a fairly nice range of options thanks to Appeal idea and Vocal proficiency, and should fit pretty well into dance teams that really want to commit to the dance position and fess. The mental mastery is a bit weird nowadays and can be seen as the oddity of this card, but otherwise she's a fairly complete package for dance teams. I moderately recommend pulling for Yuika, but she is a permanent card, so she may come around eventually. Next up we have Rinzai. Our latest event, Rinzai SR, is actually a fairly competent card when you break down the pieces that make up her design. She's practically designed after Rinzai 6 in a lot of ways, but with lower values to accommodate being a free unit. While this Rinzai packs nowhere near as much punch with her passives, the utility between her appeals and her gold passive will actively encourage teams to at least give her a shot. Having an effective 25% memory gauge boost online by turn 3 is greatly appreciated, and may set up teams to use a second memory appeal if Fest lasts long enough. And may set teams up to use a second memory appeal if Fest lasts long enough. Keep in mind that that gold passive can activate twice, so that could be 50% memory gauge just from one character, which is really good. Naturally, if you have Rinzai 6 with any number of stars, she'll outperform this Rinzai in a heartbeat. However, if you just need some small buffing, a little attention, and a fair bit of memory gauge manipulation, this Rinzai can cover for you well. Her roles are center, maybe, a buffer, memory gauge boost, as well as attention up, and I moderately to highly recommend farming for this Rinzai. Continues the trend of Rinzai having very good SRs, more or less across the board. Rinzai's initial skill is a Vocal 2.0 appeal that raises your Vocal by 20% for 3 turns, and your attention by 30% for 3 turns. This links into a Vocal 3.0 appeal. At max, she unlocks a Dance 2.5 appeal that raises your Dance by 30% for 3 turns, and your attention by 50% for 3 turns, and links into a Dance 3.0 appeal. Her 1-star passive is a Dance 12% up that requires your mental to be 75% or higher. This has a 40% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a memory gauge 25% up that requires the turn count to be 3 or later. This has a 25% chance to activate twice. Her 3-star uncap is a dance plus 50, and her memory appeal once maxed out is a dance 1.5 appeal that links into a vocal 3.0 appeal. For the support recommendations, hey, remember when we made the Rinzai 6 video? Well, everything here still applies. Use as many Hokago members as you can to make use of unit mastery, if applicable, and consider a Juri or Kaho appeal if you want to focus on one stat in particular and don't want to take both of Rinzai's appeals. As for some alternatives, third verse, same as the first. Utilize Hokago supports to build up appeal bonuses in grad as you can, and otherwise pack in supports that help your short-term goal of buffing up for big damage. As for the team recommendation, I feel your safest bet in using Rinzai is to make your best vocal Hokura for now, as dance Hokura, after some little bit of practice, is not quite up to par compared to vocal. It's missing some key pieces to really shine in its current state. So, much doesn't really change, but more memory gauge boosting is nice, however. As a center, Rinzai earns anywhere from a C- to maybe even an A-. If you build around her memory appeal specifically, she's technically a little stronger than a card like Rinzai 4 as a center. Ultimately, I don't feel like you'd necessarily use her as a center unless you're a huge fan of Rinzai. But she's not terrible, especially if you focus in on vocal and can guarantee the link appeal. As a unit, very similar grades to Mikoto, C to A- depending. My view of this card is that she can appear to be very middling or actually pretty useful. She's not going to be offering you a ton offensively, as her main passives do very little to provide damage. Her buffs are helpful on her appeals, but the big draw is the potential 50% memory gauge she can give you in a run, which can be crucial in a tense situation. So don't count out this SR just yet. We may see her pop up here and there. And last but not least, we have our returning card, Amana. 2019 brought us Visual Amana, who does provide a use for new producers who need a little extra help in Wing. She's one of the very few options of Audition Mastery Visual, and starting at +8 can be very helpful for true ending cards. While she won't necessarily be a powerhouse for Fest, she does have her uses. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, and Rest Boost, and she has one unique support skill, Audition Mastery Visual, reaching +8 at level 65. Her support appeal does scale, starting at a Visual 2.5, working its way to a Visual 3.0. Her TFD idea is Mental, her Insight token for Grad is Visual, and her proficiency in Landing Point is Mental. Amana's 1-star passive is a visual 18% up that requires you to be in the visual position. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a mental 10% heal, as long as the turn count is 5 or later. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a visual +50, and her 4-star appeal is a visual 0.7 that turns into a 3.5 if you land on the perfect portion of the bar. Amana's event passive is a visual 6% up that requires Amana on your team, and it has a 40% chance to activate twice. Amana earns somewhere between a C+ and a B-. The biggest thing that this Amana has going for her is the Audition Mastery, let's be real. While the 3.5 appeal at 4 stars is appreciated and not terrible, the condition might not always be in your favor, and you're better off picking up any easier 3.5 or stronger appeal from pretty much most newer cards. Let her help your visual true ends and Wing, and that's more or less about all that Amana needs to do. I recommend farming for her while she's here. And that will do it for the video today. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. Next time we'll be talking about whatever banner comes next. June is almost here. That means we definitely have to worry about another June Bride banner. Who could it be? We'll find out soon enough, I suppose. Till next time, I've been Cho. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day.